Hey everyone, it's Caitlin and welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to be showing you 2 yummy vegan entrees that would be perfect dinner ideas for the holiday season. We're going to be making some hearty, creamy, and delicious vegan mushroom risotto, followed by a vegan white lasagna. I don't know about you guys, but I used to eat that Stouffer's white lasagna all the time as a kid, and I'm really happy to have recreated this version. And both of these recipes are actually gluten-free and vegan, obviously, but they're made with slightly healthier ingredients too, so they are good for you, but they'll still keep you feeling warm and cozy and full and satisfied. So the full recipes will be linked down below as always, but for now, I will show you how to make them. So let's go. First up, we're going to be making some mushroom risotto, and risotto may seem complicated, but if you follow these very simple steps, it actually isn't that complicated to make. You just need to follow a few key points. So to start out, we're obviously going to need some mushrooms. I'm using cremini mushrooms, and I cut them into pretty thick slices, and then I just use my knife to dice them up. This way we're getting a little bit of a yummy mushroom bite in every bite that we take of the risotto. So after you've diced up your mushrooms, we're actually going to be doing 2 things first before we cook them. First, we're going to toast some nutritional yeast. I've shown you guys how to do this before. This just increases the flavor of it and makes it nice and nutty. And then we're going to set that aside, and then we're going to toast our arborio rice. And usually you wet toast the arborio rice in oil, but because I try not to use oil in my recipes, I've talked about this in a separate video if you're curious. But we're just going to dry toast it to still get some of that yummy and nutty flavor. So just stir the rice around in the pan. This takes a few minutes and you'll see that the rice kernels slowly become more golden brown. You're going to remove the pan from the heat, and now we're going to start actually cooking our risotto. So you're going to add some shallots to a pan with a splash of vegetable broth and then saute those until they become translucent. And then at this point, we're going to add in all of our diced mushrooms. Like I said, I use cremini mushrooms, but you could also mix things up and use shiitake mushrooms or more expensive mushrooms. But I just decided to use cremini because they are relatively inexpensive and they have a lot of good flavor. So we're going to actually cook our mushrooms down in some white wine. You can use any white wine you want. You want it to be dry. I used a vegan Pinot Grigio. I have more notes on this in my blog post if you're curious. And then we're also going to add in some fresh thyme to the mix. And we're just going to simmer these mushrooms in the wine and let all the alcohol from the wine cook down. This takes around 10 minutes in total, and as you can see, the mushrooms are slowly shrinking in size and becoming darker in color, and the white wine flavor is really seeping into the mushrooms and adding complexity to the dish. So one of the keys to risotto is using warm vegetable broth when you're making your risotto. So you're going to pour your vegetable broth into a large pot and heat this up simultaneously while your mushrooms are cooking before you start to cook down the arborio rice. So once the mushrooms are fully cooked though, we're going to add in our toasted arborio rice to the pan and then stir this together with the mushrooms. And then the second key point of making risotto is you only want to add a little bit of broth at a time. So you're going to start out by adding half of a cup of warm vegetable broth to the pan and then stirring this together, making sure all of the rice is evenly incorporated. And the rice will slowly absorb the vegetable broth as it cooks, and you'll know that you need to add more vegetable broth to the pan when you stir the risotto like I'm seeing here, and you can create a line and no vegetable broth seeps through that line. So then at that point, you're going to scoop out another half cup of your warm vegetable broth, add it to the mix, and then repeat this process. So this in total is what makes risotto so time consuming, because it takes anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. You want to start tasting your risotto at about 15 minutes and continue to add vegetable broth like I'm doing here. And as you can see, it's becoming creamier and more voluminous. And you'll know the risotto is done when it has a soft flavor, but the rice itself will still have a slightly al dente texture. And another thing to look for is l'onda, which is an Italian word meaning the wave. So as you can see here, when I drag my spoon through the risotto, the cooked risotto sort of ripples back like a wave in the ocean. So that's when you know your risotto is done cooking, but we're still going to jazz it up a little bit with some freshly cracked black pepper, that toasted nutritional yeast that we made earlier. And then finally, we're going to add in some of my rosemary garlic cashew cream to add extra flavor and zest and heartiness to the dish. Usually you mix in heavy cream or Parmesan cheese with risotto to make it creamy, but because this recipe is dairy-free, we're using vegan alternatives. So this is the final product of the risotto. It looks super yummy and delicious, and you want to serve it warm. And actually, while I was cooking my risotto, I decided to roast some portobello mushroom caps. This part is totally optional, but I thought it would make the dish look prettier once I was plating it. So I just sliced 3 large portobello mushrooms into pretty thick pieces and put them in a bowl. And I just did a really simple marinade of some tamari and some maple syrup to get a little bit of caramelization on them. So I poured those over the mushrooms and then just gently mixed the mushrooms together so all the pieces were well coated. And then I transferred this to a baking tray that I lined with a silicone mat and just popped these into the oven. And like I said, I did this while the risotto cooked, and they cook in about the same time it takes for you to make the risotto. So you can just pop those babies in and then take them out, and then you're ready to plate everything. As you can see, the mushrooms get nice and soft and tender and yummy. And I mean, who doesn't love more mushrooms? So then when you're ready to serve, like I said, you do want to serve the risotto as soon as possible after you cook it, because it will start to get thicker and less creamy. I also decided to serve mine with some blanched asparagus just because, you know, little greens never hurt anyone. And then I topped everything with some freshly cracked black pepper and a sprig of thyme for that fancy AF garnish. But there you go, guys. That is pretty much it. It is more time consuming than some of my other recipes, but it really isn't that hard to make, and it tastes so good. Next up, we're going to be making a white vegetable lasagna. I don't know about you guys, but I used to eat the non-vegan version of this all the time as a kid. And this recipe does have a few steps. So first, we're going to make our white sauce by adding some nutritional yeast and brown rice flour to a pot. And like we toasted the nutritional yeast before, we're just going to toast those here again to add more flavor. And then we're going to add some unsweetened soy milk to the pot, along with some nutmeg and a pinch of cayenne pepper or red pepper flakes. And then we're just going to whisk all of this together and bring the sauce to a boil, and then let it simmer for a few minutes so it gets nice and thick. And I would recommend using soy milk for this recipe. It adds a really nice flavor and heartiness to the sauce that another plant-based milk would not. So then now we're going to work on our vegetable filling, which is pretty standard and simple as well. You can even do this while you're cooking down the sauce. You're just going to add some white onion and some vegetable broth paste to a pot, and you're going to stir these together. And the reason why I'm recommending using vegetable broth paste is that we don't want to add extra moisture to the filling, but we want to add flavor. We're also going to add in some smoked paprika and some shredded carrots, and then saute this together just to incorporate the flavors. And once the carrots have softened a little, then we're going to add in some baby spinach. And I know it looks like a lot, but you guys know the story with spinach. Once you start to cook it down, it turns into like nothing. So we're going to add 5 ounces of baby spinach and then just stir that a bit. And if you're using a bigger pot than me, you could even do this step and the next step all at once. But once the spinach has wilted, we're going to add in our remaining veggies, which are just some chopped broccoli florets, as well as a little bit of fresh parsley and fresh basil for that classic lasagna flavor. Then you're just going to mix all this together. You really don't have to cook it because it's going to cook more in the oven, but just give it a good stir to make sure everything is evenly incorporated. And then you can add salt and pepper to taste. You may want to add a little bit of salt and obviously black pepper, because everything is better with black pepper. So that's the finished veggie mixture, and now we're going to assemble our lasagna. So I am using a 9x13 sized casserole dish, and to start out, you're going to pour 1 cup of the white sauce onto the bottom of the dish and spread it around with a spatula. And then we're going to add in our lasagna noodles. I'm using gluten-free lasagna noodles that I got at the grocery store, but you can use regular glutinous lasagna noodles too. Just make sure that they're oven-ready ones and you don't have to pre-bake them. And then right here, I am adding some homemade vegan ricotta. This recipe is already on my blog, so I'm just adding half of that to the lasagna and spreading it around. Then we're going to add our veggies, and like the ricotta, spread it around so you get a nice good veggie layer in every piece of the lasagna. Then we're going to add another cup of the white sauce on top of that, and that is our first lasagna layer. And then essentially you're just going to repeat this process for the second layer, adding the noodles, the ricotta, the veggies, and then another cup of the sauce. And then for our final top layer, we're going to add 1 layer of noodles, and then we're just going to add the remainder of the sauce. There'll probably be about 2-ish cups left. We want our lasagna to be nice and moist and saucy. And then here I'm just topping it with some gluten-free breadcrumbs. Again, if you're not gluten-free, you could just use regular breadcrumbs. And then we're just going to cover this with tinfoil, and we're going to cook it for a bit in the oven while it's covered, and then uncover it and cook it for about another 15 minutes. But after it's done, it will look a little bit something like this. And you want to let it set for about 5 to 10 minutes or so before you attempt to cut it, just because the lasagna is going to be really hot. But afterwards, you can cut it into however many pieces that you would like. And I just want to show you here, it's better to use like a pressing action with a knife than to slide it. Otherwise, it's harder to cut and you may not cut all the way through the lasagna. But while the lasagna is still warm, you can use your handy dandy spatula and scoop a piece out. And I just wanted to take a moment and pause and look at all these yummy, delicious veggie layers and that vegan ricotta cheese and the white sauce and the crispy breadcrumbs. I'm pretty dang proud of the recipe, and I hope you guys enjoy it. This totally takes me back to my childhood, and I think it would be a perfect recipe for a Christmas or holiday dinner. And that is it for this video. Leave a comment down below telling me which recipe was your favorite and which one you want to make first. And also leave a comment below telling me what you're planning on eating for your Christmas dinner. I know it can vary a lot based on your family celebration or what culture you're from, and I always think it's really interesting to learn about that. If you don't already have plans and you don't want to make one of these recipes, I'll also leave a few other links down below for other vegan meal inspiration for the holiday dinner. Last year I made some stuffed acorn squash, which were super, super yummy. And I also just published a lentil loaf recipe for Thanksgiving that I think would be perfect for Christmas as well. So if you all are having a wonderful holiday season so far, I hope you enjoyed this video and my holiday series. If you missed the other videos, I showed you guys how to make some holiday thumbprint cookies as well as some holiday breakfast ideas. So all those will be linked down below too. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe using that button right down there. I post new videos every single week, and leave a comment below with a Christmas tree if you made it this far into the video. Yeah, other than that, I hope you guys have an awesome rest of your day, whatever time of day it is for you, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!